Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the Town of Rockingham Select Board Meeting.
Actually, better known as the Board of Selectmen meeting. It's May 16th at 6 p.m. We are in the lower theater, the town hall. There is a Zoom link on the agenda that you can get off the RockBF website, and a phone number to dial in if you have problems getting on. So that being said, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And the first item of business is to approve the minutes of May 2nd. Would want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of May 2nd.
And I will second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of May 2nd. Any conversation, discussion, deletions, omissions, corrections, etc.? Seeing and hearing done, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, unanimous. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and for pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. There will be two adjustments to the meeting tonight. One is going to be item 5A, which is a grand list extension request. And Mr. Noble is here to address that, so we won't keep him here all night. And there will be an executive session, contract matter, and there will be no comment made once discussion the executive session is finished. So I have no other additions to that. Scott?
No, the only thing is just some additional information that was handed out to the trustees for items that are already on the agenda. The BIFTA folks, their design committee has some comments about our discussion this evening about some of the repairs that we talked about in the downtown. So that's one of the items that's new that's at your seat, as well as some updated information about some additional sidewalk work that we want to talk about that relates to our paving for later on in June and early July. So those are the two additional items, as well as an updated letter. Peter had made some adjustments to a letter that was in your packet. So this letter has an additional paragraph that we're going to be asking you for signature later this evening. But they were already noticed on the agenda.
It's item 5 anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Board members? No? Okay, moving right along, let's go to public comment on items not on the agenda. We'll give you 3 minutes. There she comes. Anyone? Going once? Oh, right along to the manager's report.
So we are still in the process, and we'll talk later this evening about our final schedule for paving. The reason I can't give you a definitive schedule right now, we are scheduled to start milling the last week of June, but we still don't have confirmation of the delivery of the utility rings and covers and things that we need to raise utilities in the street. So we have to make sure that those items are on hand and available before they mill the street and then leave the street in condition for an extended period waiting on the delivery. So as soon as we get confirmation, hopefully by your next meeting, we'll be able to confirm that schedule, and we'll try to put something on the website so that people that don't pay attention through this meeting or other means, we also do handouts and different door knockers and things, so people won't be caught completely unaware, but we'll try to keep people up to date on that as it happens, because they are fairly disruptive to pave on the street with all the activities. So we'll make sure that we have plenty of notice so folks aren't caught unaware with that.
Scott, I just missed, looks like maybe somebody in the waiting room.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Susan. Yep. There she goes.
Anything else?
No.
What's that? Anyone else? Board? Okay. Move on into the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is a public hearing for VCPP implementation grant. It's a gas boiler replacement. And I'll open that meeting, notice of the hearing. The town of Rockingham is considering making application to the state of Vermont for a VCPP implementation grant 2022 under the Vermont Community Development Program. A public hearing will be held at 6:15 p.m. We may be a tad early on that. on 5/16/23 at 7 the Square, to obtain the views of citizens on community development, to furnish information concerning the amount of funds available and the range of community development activities that may be undertaken under the program, the impact to any historical and archaeological resources that may be affected by the proposed project, and to give affected citizens the opportunity to examine the proposal and a statement of proposed use of these funds. The proposal is to apply for $500,000 in CDBG grants, which will be used to accomplish the following activities. A sub-grant to Gross for replacement of Gross and antiquated oil burning boilers for the biomass wood chip system for recommendation with Du Bois and King on a 2020 mechanical systems assessment report. The system will include installation of biomass boiler and LP boiler backup and an exterior wood chip silo. The entire project will include the project management, engineering, boiler installation, piping installation, demolition of the existing boiler system, and piping. A light remodel of the boiler room, remediation of the underground oil tank, electrical controls, and work for boilers. Proposed cost of the entire system is $1,770,850 with a suggested $100,000 fund for contingencies. The total proposed cost is $1,870,850. Copies of the proposed application are available at 7 Square, Bells Falls, Vermont, which is Town Hall, and may be viewed during the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Should you require any special accommodations, please contact Gary Fox at 802-376-5425 to ensure appropriate accommodations are made. The hearing, please, for the hearing impaired, please dial TTY number 1-800-253-0191. So, that being read, anyone have any questions or comments in regard to the proposal? Talent.
Will there be a competitive bidding process?
Yes.
And who
That's the
will,
requirement.
will that be managed by Du Bois and King, or would that be managed by you guys?
I believe that will be managed by, us to get the contractor, the engineers, and then the engineers will probably do. Actually, if it's community development, is it managed by the town?
So,
I have the papers there.
yeah, so the town will have a sub-grant agreement with Gross that includes, management and operations, and it will describe how all those pieces are set up. And, the community development program is federal funds. They do, require that we follow the town's procurement policies as a pass-through, even though it's sub-granted to Gross, and, anything over $15,000 does require competitive bidding, with written proposals. And the way it's set up, it's available to be defined in the sub-grant agreement, but I would think it would be how Marty was initially describing it before, she went on to the town gets the grant. So however Gross wanted to handle it, generally it sounds like they're hiring engineers, and the engineers will be the project managers and will do the request for proposals. So they're able to define the specifications in a way that lay people aren't, and get the appropriate responses from bidders, and put appropriate weightings and the criteria to score bidders on. But then we would want to have a representative on the committee that's selecting the responsive bidder that gets chosen for the work. Because the town is accountable basically for how the project goes.
And the $1.8 million figure, how was that reached?
So we
What do you
currently
got,
have almost $900,000 from Northern Borders Regional Commission. We have $72,000 from the Vermont Capital Investment Program, which is now Community Response and Recovery. I am able to go back to them for some funding, which I plan on doing, because there's no guarantees for the community development block grant. We had so there was a little bit of a of a hitch in the program. Initially, when I applied to community development block grant, it was for the November session. When I sent the application in, a couple of weeks later, they asked for an interview with me, and we talked about some things. It was a little difficult. They couldn't peg exactly what I did because, does anyone here not know what I do? What Greater Rockingham Area Services is? So I'll explain that first. Greater Rockingham Area Services is the entity that manages the buildings and grounds of the old hospital building here in town. Used to be Rockingham Memorial Hospital. So we don't actually provide the healthcare, we provide the space for the healthcare to happen. So community development block grant, we had to kind of qualify that with them. They understood who we were, and they had actually had funded the dental center for back in the day. They were focusing that particular round on housing. So they basically asked me to pull my application and resubmit in the next session, thinking that they would have more funding possibly available. So that put the project about a year behind. There's no way we could have maybe squeaked it in this year. I could have lined everything up, but it's not, it won't happen until next year. A couple of the funding sources that I had found, incentives from Efficiency Vermont and a Lyndon Wiki grant, may not come back at the same level. So I'm actively searching for other sources. We've applied to the village for ARPA funding. We will be applying this for some level of, for whatever we can't fund in grants, we'll be applying for USDA and fundraising. We actually have, we did a soft start of our campaign and we have $100,000.
Any other questions for? Hearing and seeing none, I will formally close the hearing, and we're done with the hearing portion, and continue now into the main agenda, which is appointment of for town health officer. Many of you may or may not know that I am now the health officer for town Rockingham. That came in the mail to me, my certificate, my badge, and everything else. I thought, what is this? Well, statute says that once the existing health officer resigns, the Board of Health has always been the town of Rockingham, and the chair then assumes dubious distinction being the health officer. But we are appointing one tonight, so my resignation letter will be sent to Mr. Levine tomorrow or whenever. So if all goes well, we will accomplish that fact. So that being said, Scott, I think we've got a appointment letter we need to sign.
We do.
John McGinnis has stepped up, he's put as deputy health officer in the meantime under Chuck. And so with Chuck being gone, he has been the interim health officer, and now the state has finally recognized that Chuck's gone. Surprise, surprise. But so now we need to just go through the process of appointing a health officer. So
So
Do we need a motion?
we should probably do a motion.
you would need a motion,
Right.
and then there will be.
Can we have a couple of questions first?
Sure, Brian.
I recall there, when Chuck was doing it, there were some complications having the planning office and the health office be the same thing.
That's why we were recommending that we use Sean.
Okay,
Yes.
so Sean will be a permanent, this is not an interim appointment.
Right now, it's a temporarily permanent interim appointment.
Sounds like a
Follow that one, right?
We're gonna send that one up
Sounds
to
like
the
an
state that way
oxymoron.
too.
But
Right.
we're actually still advertising for
Correct.
health officer
Right.
and also for a zoning person, so I'm not having much luck finding anybody that's wants to step up, so that's why we're at this point.
Correct.
Okay. Temporary permanent.
But if we do get a planning and zoning person, the idea would be we did not want them to be health officer. We wanted to separate those duties and responsibilities, so.
I recall you making that.
Yeah.
Some of the reason for that too is that if the village ordinance goes into effect about the housing,
Yeah.
they're gonna be lucky to keep up with the requirements of that program. And
Health officer.
yeah, they've already been told that to do it temporary or part-time, it's not gonna cut it. There's a lot of work and paperwork and inspection time, and it's so.
So basically, we're asking the board to accept Peter's resignation as the health officer and then appointing Sean McGinnis, who's currently our deputy health officer, as our health officer. And then we'll send all that paperwork up, and I'm sure somebody in Montpelier will be thoroughly confused. Sorry.
Alright,
So I would appreciate a motion to accept my resignation as the health officer appointed by the state.
I,
Can you get that motion on board?
I move that we accept Peter Golick's resignation from his recently acquired position of health officer.
We'll hear a second.
I'll second that.
Motion being seconded to accept my resignation as the state appointed health officer. Any discussion, questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we will take a
All
motion
right, I
to
move that
appoint.
we appoint
Okay.
Sean McGinnis as our health officer.
Wait a second.
I'll second. Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Sean McGinnis as the town health officer. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Sean is appointed. So you have something coming around?
I'll get something for that. So we'll have to do the resolution to attach to it. So I'll have to put the
Okay.
notes with it because they want to see the board action before
Yeah, okay.
the full.
So you got the form, right? So I'll just stop up tomorrow and sign it.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, now we need appointments to the plan commission. There is a couple of them up there. There's a letter in your packet. People switching to go, so we're, there's some recommended motions on the letter, so if someone wants to read the first one for Jim Mullen.
I move that we appoint Jim Mullen to fill Kate Rum's seat on the planning commission through June 30th, 2023.
We're a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Jim Mullen to fill Kate Room's seat on the planning commission through June 30, 2023. Discussion? Hearing seeing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, let's move on to the second one. This is to appoint John Dunbar and Janet Bryant to 3-year terms on the planning commission through June 30, 2026, and to appoint Jim Mullen to a 1-year term ending June 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Second that.
Nobody else wants to read it. Okay. Motion made and seconded to appoint John Dunbar and Janet Bryant to 3-year terms on the planning commission through June 30, 2026, and to appoint Jim Mullen to a 1-year term ending June 30, 2024. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now, they are attempting to expand the planning commission. So the next couple of them are dealing with that. Planning commission votes is to recommend the number of members on the commission be increased to 9 members. So I'd like someone to read the recommended motion to follow that one. It's
Okay.
under 3.
I'll move to increase the number of voting members appointed to the planning commission to 9 members.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion's made and seconded to increase the number of voting members appointed to the planning commission to 9 members. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now, planning commission nominated Taylor Pichette, I think that's right, to the 8th member on the planning commission for a 3-year term of July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2026. So
I move that we appoint Taylor Pichette to a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026.
your second.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Taylor Pichette to a 3-year term on the planning commission beginning July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2026. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed would say nay. Motion carried. Moving right along to the appointment to the Walk Bike Committee. There's a letter in our packet for Doug McPhee with wishing to join the Walk Bike Committee, so I'll take a motion to appoint Doug McPhee.
I move that we appoint Doug McPhee to the Rockingham Walk Bike Committee.
A second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Doug McPhee to the Rockingham Walk Bike Committee. Any further discussion?
Is this an addition or is this a replacement? I mean, how many are in the committee now?
He would be a alternate in case someone doesn't make one of the meetings and he votes and we have five, so, you know, so it's just a,
Sorry, I thought that 5 was the minimum, but I didn't realize we
No.
couldn't go over 5.
I think the board decided a five-member committee would be sufficient.
That's what I-
So that's why when I got back to Rick, I told him, I said, we can appoint him as an alternate. So if someone didn't come in or they needed a 5-member board, then you'd have 5 people to vote. So, motion's been made and seconded to appoint Douglas McPhee to the Walk Bike Committee. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Nay, 5. House 480 reappraisal legislative update and proposed board letter. This came about because I don't know if people are keeping track of the 480, but there's a proposal at the State House to have the state take over the appraisal process and not have the listers involved or have the listers that are elected involved to a minimum degree. So we have composed a letter here to oppose the proposal, and also there is a proposal within that as that the BCA would be restricted on some of their appeals. Anybody has an appeal, they would probably, God only knows, they'd probably have to go to Montpelier or wherever to make an appeal. So we're opposing those options. It appears that there are 165 towns out of 294, I believe, that have not done their appraisals. So the state's in an uproar about that. So our proposal also includes that perhaps they might go on, instead of picking on the towns that are already got their appraisals done and can do them, they should assist the towns that need the help and not make everybody else suffer the consequences. So that being said, Mr. Noel, do you have anything further to enlighten us on that one, or you want to wait for your? The listeners also have written a letter, very nicely done by Mike Stack, on the listers that's included in our packet, that will be going along with this. So.
No, it's, what we've put together for tonight is just a very fundamental process, and I'm not gonna call it directly challenging this lady, but if you read the letter that the select board put together, it clearly simply describes that we object to the removal of the citizens from the game of being involved with the appraisals and the hearings. We object to the elimination of the BCA. So that's the fundamental thing. We've sent the state probably 70 pages of testimony, and we have received some relatively positive feedback from them. We will be holding a meeting here with some of the senators, representatives, et cetera, to discuss this sometime in early September, which is before they bring it up for vote. That process is being planned right now. And I think I'm not gonna say it's under control, but it is being addressed. And the select board has done a great job of supporting it, so that makes our life simpler. The whole business does not affect Bellas Falls or Rockingham. We're fortunately capable of doing our own reappraisals. I'm certified to supervise them anywhere in the state, so I'm not gonna go supervise anybody else. I got my hands full here. And I think we mentioned in our other thing that you're gonna bring up that we are prepared to hand in our grand list today. It's done for this year. And the hitch in that get along is strictly a problem the state's having with a new computer system that won't, the new system will not talk to the old one.
I'm gonna cut you off there because yeah, that's the next step down the
All right,
line,
we'll do
so
that.
I'll cut you off there and correct the other.
Yeah, question. Paul, on point 2 here, retain the COD trigger of 20, is that 20% of that?
What's it say?
It
The
says,
COD is at 20, is that a percent?
20%.
okay, the percentage is missing from the document, so we should probably put that in.
But that's how it's written in the state proposal, just say COD of 20.
Oh, really? They didn't,
They didn't put a
explain
We
percentage.
just copied their language.
So,
It should be a percent, just
should be,
because that's how
but
it's.
because it does say
Right.
confusion, but it's,
I know.
I mean, the CLA did have the percentage in there, said,
Right.
certain percent, but
Right.
when the language from the state was
That,
just COD of 20.
that whole business, which I don't wanna talk at length about that, but the CLA COD issue that's in there is strictly a mathematical problem. It's not, legal or technical or anything else. It's just the way they have interpreted it was incorrect and made it non-usable, and by putting it back like that, it becomes active again. That's all.
Please.
Okay, any other further questions on this article? I'll take a motion to, have the proposal, sent to the State House, or for our opposition and have the board members sign it. And there, I have a,
Could we copy our local legislators on this? Will we
it's
automatically?
gonna go on everybody.
We're gonna send the primary copies to the actual legislator, but we have a mailing list on the emails that will go to every representative in Wyndham
It's also going to the
Okay,
government.
all right, thanks.
and the governor.
So,
Thank you.
we need a motion to approve the.
I move that we approve the letter to the House Appropriations Committee.
I second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve the letter of opposition to the appraisal system proposed by the state. Any further discussion? Hearing seen none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Sign this away. Okay, let's move along. Our last meeting passed around. 5A is a request for an extension to file our grand list, which causes several problems, and I will refer to Mr. Noble to explain that detail. While you have the floor, if you can.
If you haven't heard, I can announce that the state has decided to change the accounting system for the grand list. They have a new program. It's called Vermont Pi. You can look it up on your computer. It won't work. And so it can't talk with NEMRIC, which is the current system. Unfortunately, the two systems do not converse with each other at this moment. So if we can't transfer the grand list that's on NEMRIC into Vermont Pi yet. And that's underway. The state has sent that letter, request for an extension to every town in Vermont, strictly as a maneuver to give them 30 days more time to accomplish the connection between the two computers. As I mentioned earlier, we in Rockingham are prepared to send that right now. It's done. We understand why a lot of the other towns can't, because they hire outside appraisers. And in so doing, there are not enough appraisers in the state of Vermont to handle 165 towns. So there's been a delay in this whole process. Hopefully 30 days is enough.
So as I understand it too, that this could delay tax bills going out, which causes problems. Also, without the grand list and these two programs trying to work with each other, they can't establish a school tax, which is a big problem. So that's why we're doing the extension request. What was it, 60 days? I think, yeah, 30 days.
30.
And, we're sending a letter also to them saying, we're ready to send ours in, you know, you guys need to postpone the system implementation for a year until they figure out the bugs. And then some will go through accordingly, but who knows? It's the states, it's requested this, not the towns. So it's almost like a whose problem is it type of situation, finger pointing going on, so. So we need a motion to approve the, grand list extension request and have the chair of the board sign said document.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to have the chair of the board sign the grand list extension request. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. And if you signed, is that right? The letter that is going with this is as follows: attached please find form BVR 4342, which is this form we just signed, application for grand list extension. We are submitting this request based upon your suggestion that some towns are finding it challenging to file their abstract on time due to the axiomatic Vermont 5 system delays. Currently, we do not anticipate any problem meeting our responsibility for filing. So that is signed by the lister, so hopefully they make it the point. And move it along. Okay, that business is done. Train station update. There's another update, a letter in your package. Gary's here to explain any questions.
Well, there's been some changes since we last spoke. You know, this is a lot like Marty's project with their boiler replacement. There's multiple funders. They all have different requirements. It's a alphabet soup of different acronyms and frustrations to try to get all of their pre-qualification requirements satisfied. And there's been a couple of things that we were not able to do. So we had to change some of our funding options in order to move the project along, especially as it related to our environmental review process. So because of those things and the fact that it had changed since the last time you had seen it, I think maybe even in December, we thought it was probably about time to give the board just an update and walk through some of the challenges that we've seen, some of the things we had to rearrange, and then sort of look ahead as to what we're looking at milestones as we go forward. So Gary's here and he's been leading the charge on this, so I'll turn it over to Gary to update him.
So the major impact, a lot of little details, but really what it comes down to is the planning money that we were gonna get to do some advanced work for the exterior brick facade, designing the canopy so they could coordinate with V-Trans while they do the platform to get footings put in. We were choosing not to access the community development block grant funds because of the HUD conditions, environmental, and so we are shifting the timing with the Northern Border Regional Commission funds, and Northern Border agreed to this, and they're happy to see the project moving and think it's a fine way to go. And so we're requesting planning funds, the planning funds that are in the Northern Border's budget before the NEPA review is complete, so that the design work we want to, the design work can get done before the NEPA piece. It's just the physical work they don't want you starting on. So Northern Border is going to help with that, allow us to access the budget for the planning money, get the design we need done earlier done, and then their NEPA acceptance, which will have to happen before the building can be closed on, doesn't have the one piece in it that's a game stopper that HUD has. And the same with the FRA. So the FRA approached us on that grant, and work is beginning in that. And they also have a NEPA process, but which also is reasonable for what we're doing. Yeah, so bottom line, couple little shifts and the project will move along, this time.
Well, question, Richard's ready for
Yeah,
one.
sorry, I'm quick. Have we closed on that yet?
So we cannot close until, all of the federal funders approve of a National Environmental Policy Act submission and the Section 106 historic preservation reviews.
Which we've been coordinating for multiple months.
Yes, so it's in process.
Right.
It can often take 6 months or more. Ours has been going since August, I guess.
Right.
And the seller is fine with that delay around rail systems?
Gary keeps in touch with them. The price and our option is still the same, so our agreement in principle is still the same. So I don't anticipate we'll have a problem.
What's the schedule for the Amtrak platform work? When that's scheduled?
Yeah, so we had a coordination meeting with the V-Trans project manager for that last week, and they're still in preliminary, so they don't have, they only have concepts at this point, and they'll be moving into design in a month or two. But we are in contact and working together on it at this point.
I don't think it's this summer or this fall.
No.
No.
Oh, for construction, no, they're,
No.
yeah, a month or two till they get the design.
Right, so we're anticipating next year, maybe spring, if they don't run any roadblocks, so I could see it out for bid late this fall, early winter, and then an award and potential work starting in the spring.
Roadblocks, that's funny, because right of way for a road was a 3-month block,
Correct.
It just ended.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else? I'm gonna jump and take a break into the agenda, and I see Mr. Bright sitting there. Is there some purpose for you? Are you announcing the results or?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to be here because the animal holding contract.
Okay, all right, then we'll right along to.
Yeah, so sorry,
Fine. Move right along to item number 7, which is the wayfinding signage and walkable Rockingham program update. I don't know who's leading this one off, but there is a letter in our packet explaining what's going on.
Right, so there was a host of initiatives that Gary and a bunch of the downtown folks have been coordinating. And so since there were so many and they were somewhat all high profile, we thought it'd be an opportunity at the meeting tonight to just give you an update in sort of a more universal way, so that as you see activities happening, you'll understand that they've been coordinated and that they're working through all these various committees and reviews. So some of those have been long-term projects, have been around for a period of time, and are now just getting to the point where we were able to access funding and get to the point where we're ready for implementation. Some are things that are community-based, and people have asked to do some things that I think Gary can touch on as well. So they're all good things. It's just something that we want to bring to the board's attention because people will see activity, and I'm sure they'll have questions, and at least that way you have information, so.
And so I guess a lot of different places this project has started. So I guess one common one that we all know, when the community visit from BCRD, a couple hundred people all saying, what are the assets that we have in our town? And so many things were listed. And we've had different people that help, like a Wyndham Regional Commission mapper who said, so I was looking at myself as if I was coming into town as a visitor and said, okay, so I see there's, like all of these great assets, I see different pieces of it. I can't figure out where I am, how to get to any of these pieces, what that looks like. So that's one example. Another one with the Downtown Development Alliance, looking at a marketing grant when COVID marketing came out. As we were talking, it seemed like wayfinding was really the critical piece that needed to happen there. Historic preservation with self-guided walking tours that the CLG Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, has in their purview and has guides to. All of these different pieces need the same thing, some kind of consistent, recognizable, marked signage that can be on maps, that can be in our kiosks, that can be placed on trails. And so, for simplicity, put it into those few different areas. And the examples in the memo were just some recent pieces that have been implemented, so you could, or that are 3 different phases. So the Riverfront Trail that the Bellows Falls Historical Society owns, you can walk down there, and there's a beautiful kiosk. Get the name of the company. They hand make them to specification and come and help install them, put together with pegs through holes, and another interpretive kiosk on the trail. So those were put in fall of 2022. And then at the Robertson Paper Company, a kiosk for the Bellows Falls Area Development Corporation is putting in. The excavation was done this past weekend, and concrete will be poured next week. And a kiosk with interpretive content that's made out of repurposed steel, granite, brick from the Robertson Paper Company will be installed there. Probably will be completed a month to 6 weeks time from now. The Hotel Wyndham, there was a historic marker that was put in a place to, there were a couple different things, avoiding blocking windows, a few things about the placement that as time has gone on, it's not really visible. And so a few different organizations looking to have that moved out into, there's a spot between the sidewalk and it's in the bump out next to a bench, but back right next to the sidewalk. It seems like a perfect place that is hoping to be moved during June as part of Pride Month. And one side of the marker recognizes that history that the Andrews Inn. And then moving into the second half of the year, a project that comes out of the VORAC pump track grant. It's the marketing aspect, and so BIFTA is spearheading that piece in conjunction with the town, and it's recreational. Actually, Betsy, do you want to describe that?
Sure, thank you. Betsy Thurston, Bellows Falls Downtown, Rockingham Development. So it kind of connects trails. So there's gonna be 5 different trails. A lot of people are coming to the pump tracks and the trail up behind the rec center now, trying to drive them downtown, as well as people maybe that aren't into biking or hiking. They can do the retail trail. There's an island trail, so the island tour around for more historical, and the riverfront trail. And so it's just connecting visitors to our outside free assets, plus getting them into stores. The stores and the participating businesses, all they have to do is initial a map or passport, have stickers, and people collect those initials. They'll get gear, like a water bottle with a really cool logo, and
Walk the Rock.
it's Walk the Rock. Yeah. So again, connecting everything that we've been trying to work on, getting it
So
connected.
have you designed these pamphlets, things like that?
That is part of the VORAC grant, so the design and everything will be Maya and Damien from Brattleboro. Yeah, so it's going to be a real art, really well done, and then the participating businesses are paying for the actual printing and the swag.
So it's and there's also a map and brochure of all of the trails that are that'll have the wayfinding information on it. It is part of the VORAC grant. It's paying for the brochure and the marketing. And Maya and Damien are creative catalysts out of Newfane. They did do a branding project at Brattleboro and one in Rutland. At any rate, their work is good and affordable, and they were hired in part with some funds that BDCC has for helping municipalities, and the printing and brochures paid for VORAC grant. So, yeah, well positioned for those pieces.
Could someone explain the reasoning between, on the hotel Wyndham Andrews and historic marker ceremony? What, I remember when this historic marker was put in there, there was quite a lot of discussion about that over a couple of meetings. And in the past, there was quite a volatile situation with the gay community at that point. So I'm wondering why it needs to be moved, number one, other than the fact that it's not supposedly visible. And how's it gonna be accomplished? I mean, putting it in the bump out seems a little, I don't know, to me, it just, I don't understand why it needs to be in the bump out.
Where is it now? Excuse me, sorry.
Oh,
Where is it
On
now?
the side.
It's on the side of the building.
Where the flowers are, like
Yeah, yeah,
the southern faces.
Yeah.
it's right on the wall.
No, it's not on the wall, it's standing.
Standing wall?
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
standing,
your side.
that's on the signpost and everything. And I believe that's a state erected, sign, as long as it's the same as the one down at the canal. So the state's probably gonna have to be involved in this. I don't know, if anybody's checked with them as to how they feel about having it moved. My question is, how's it gonna get moved and who's paying for it?
Is it cemented?
So just finding out.
So initially, the project was supposed to have a ceremony where some state folks who actually approached Rockingham when the initiative came up about the opportunity and thought it would be good there. So the Division of Historic Preservation, the director of the program, Treichman, Laura Treichman, I think her name is. At any rate, she proposed it. A number of the state dignitaries were proposed to be part of a ceremony, and then COVID hit. And they kept trying to put together an event, and then there would be another wave of COVID, and people didn't feel like it was safe. They didn't want to I forget what they called it. It was super spreader. Didn't want to have a super spreader event, and but wanted to get it put up. So I think the Division of Historic, our local Historic Preservation Commission, Walter, corralled some folks in his commission to actually do the install without a ceremony because it was during COVID. And we have the specifications from the state of what they need it to be, and the proposed placement does have those specifications. And so I guess I think Walter might be on the line. I would ask if Walter and Elijah's on the Historic Preservation Commission as well, if either of them or both of them would like to speak to it as well.
Walter, are you prepared to speak to this subject?
I am. Do folks hear me?
Yes.
Good. I think my second or third week on the job, I was asked to see what I can do to get the historic marker installed. And it was in the midst of the height of COVID. And I was able to get some folks to help. We went out and following the recommendations and the requirements that were developed by the select board before my time. So I'm not quite sure exactly what the process was, but I was, if you will, handed some marching orders and said, this is where it needs to go. I was given a map and with very, very clear arrows as to where to put the marker. So armed with a post hole digger and a sawzall and a couple of pieces of pressure treated lumber, we dug the hole. We discovered that the top part of the train tunnel is about 3.5 feet down below the ground. We had to stop there. We put it in place, and per what we were told where to put it, and it's been there ever since. And I know that in recent times there have been some conversations, and I must say that since that event, putting it in, and that must have been sometime in 2019, that that there were conversations that once COVID goes away, we should have some sort of a ceremony to dedicate it or to bring attention to it, statewide as well as locally. And because COVID persisted, that never happened. And in more recent times, now that COVID is going away as an issue, the question or the matter has come up: do we keep the sign where it is? What kind of an appropriate celebration might we have uh, to bring attention to the fact that the Andrews Inn, which at one time was regarded as a very, very, very special place, not only in the Bellows Falls community and in Rockingham, but certainly within the hearts and minds of many in the LGBTQ community throughout the region. And I think that it would be inappropriate, and I must say at last week's HPC meeting, we had a conversation, and the HPC is very energized by the notion of not only drawing attention, but also possibly relocate it to a more prominent space, pulling it away from the side of the building and putting it out in that little bump out. Probably be moving it over just about 10 or 12 feet, but having it a little more readily visible. Similar to the historic marker, I might point out, that is up by the Supreme Court building and the State House up in Montpelier, that marks the historic event of the very important historic event of the Vermont passing a gay marriage law. So I think that it would be an appropriate statement to say that the HPC is very much interested in having that moved out and would support the moving out of that marker so that there's a greater visibility.
It was June 29th, 2020, when Walter and his crew installed the current site.
You have the date. Wonderful.
Yeah, also to correct your statement, the select board did not push this or it was brought to us by the Historic Preservation Committee. The only involvement the select board has is the whole public meeting so that the public and the board can make suggestions, and some of that involved the wording that was on the plaque itself.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't stipulate where the sign was gonna go. That the state had that all figured out for us. They just said, this is where it's going. What do you want to read? That's basically the involvement the select board had.
Peter, I stand corrected. Thank you for bringing me up to speed as to what happened. I was not around, so I don't know exactly their issues that one picked up on.
Yeah, I went back and checked my minutes for those meetings, and that's well, John Lutman was the leader of the band on that process. So.
Yep, that's my understanding.
So it's just, who is going to install this or move it or I mean, my concern is any issues that are going to be involved with a bump out. I mean, we're going to be talking a little later about bump outs and stamped concrete versus brick replacement, and so I think this is appropriate time to figure out how that's going to be accomplished down there. And is the state going to be involved in doing it? They were the ones that installed it, I believe, installed the sign where it is now.
I think that the state may have identified where to place it, and the actual placement was done by your humble presenter, myself, and the crew of folk. Again, based on what we were told, this is where it should go. I would need to contact the State Historic Preservation Office and see if there is the possibility of funding to support the movement as to what it would cost to move the sign out. That certainly is not in the current CLG budget, and it would be something that that I would have to explore with the state.
Yeah, I know that when the whole process went through, there was some concern, at least I brought it up about, you know, at the time, because some of the discussion was kind of wavery about it, but the vandalism that may have occurred and who was gonna be responsible to fix the sign if it got damaged, and the state stepped up, and said that would be their issue. So, you know, I don't know where we go from here. I'm not objecting to the thing, but I just wanna make sure we got our bases covered as to the funding, number one, and make sure that we're not damaging the bump outs by installing it in the bump out versus, you know, I mean, in winter time with the frost and even the bricks and everything, we got problems with a couple other spots that we're gonna attempt to fix, so just looking out for, you know, for the town interest.
Yep. Understood. And what I would propose doing is I will be in touch with the State Historic Preservation Office and get a feel from them as to what funding opportunities would be available to us to support the movement, but also, I think more critically, how the state might propose helping us address any kind of vandalism or, you know, a repair of a sign like that. Because if the sign gets damaged, if it is painted over or somehow damaged, who is going to pay for that? That is for the remediation, for dealing with the damage. And I'll get a feel, happy to report back after I contact the folks up in Montpelier.
Okay, because the
Does that
next meeting
help?
we're starting our summer schedule for meetings, so the next meeting we will be looking at is June 13th, excuse me. So you've got a full time to play with that at Walt, so we'll send you on a
We
mission.
would like to
I'll
treat
be
it
in-
before June though.
Yeah.
Is our,
I- Yep.
So, feel like we have a lot of expertise. I think we can just, we can make all this happen pretty easily. Feel like
What did Elijah say?
I say, I think that we have a lot of expertise, and I think that we can make this happen pretty quickly.
Moving it.
Is there a concrete block on the underneath that sign that's holding that up, Walt, or is that just
No,
stuck in the ground?
no. It is not in cement. There are different options available, and we chose to use simply some pressure treated lumber to provide an anchor, again, following the guidelines that the state provided us with. So there's no concrete that needs to be broken apart to remove it. It's essentially digging it up, then carefully removing it, and then taking off the pressure treated lumber anchor that was applied to it. I think the real cost for removing it over is going to be, and I'm not quite sure exactly where on the bump out, but if there's brickwork there, if there's concrete work that needs to be done there, I have no idea what that might cost. So, but I can find out if there is funding available for that and report back. And meanwhile, maybe we could get an idea as to what and who would do the work. Is this something that the town crew can take on? The initial installation was kicked over to the Historic Preservation Commission because at the time there was a lot of the town crew was down in the midst of COVID and shorthanded. It just seemed like a natural thing for us to be able to quickly put it in, but we were not prepared if we had to use concrete or deal with moving and breaking apart concrete or brickwork or anything. We were told it would be a simple install, and we simply followed those simple install instructions that we received. Question now becomes who would undertake and who would pay for the installation in a more prominent spot in that bump out. Which I think, again, I think the CLG is very clear that that would be an ideal an ideal move to make.
There's an issue with the tree there too. If the roots get damaged and the tree could die, and then we gotta be playing with the tree situation. So there's multiple issues that need to be looked at before, you know, we get into something. We don't even know what's underneath that bump out.
That's another thing. We had no idea that we'd be hitting brickwork for the train tunnel. In fact, it's down. The recommendation of the part of the state is that the pole should go down a full 4 feet into the earth. However, we had to stop at about 3.5 feet because we hit the brick. First, we scratched our heads, I remember, and said, "Could this be some riprap left over from a fire when the Wyndham Hotel burned many years ago, when they had just bulldozed something in?" But then we looked at it more carefully, and you could see that it was all set in place. So I'm not quite sure just what that whole architecture is, how that's engineered underneath there, and just how expansive that. But that's not our, what we did was we took a sawzall and we cut off, we took off a 1/2 foot off the post. We could fit it in there properly.
Okay.
Yeah, we're also going to be moving the marker at the Rockingham Meeting House as well. As part of the overall goals for townwide wayfinding. And we're also going to be installing a couple of interpretive kiosks on that site. So we're looking at this kind of part of the overall goal for working between all the different organizations in town and Historic Preservation Commission, the Development Office, and everything, looking at just townwide wayfinding, positioning, signage, and the best possible locations, and just coming up with a cohesive plan. So we have a lot of things that are going to be implemented over the next few months, and other things we're working on. So
you want to have some kind of a ceremony next month?
That's our hope.
And you're saying you want to move by that time? Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're trying to do. Yep.
Doesn't sound like you can. You need to just keep one stuff. I mean, I don't know.
The issue with trying to get the town involved, the highway department involved too, is that you're gonna be starting the paving and sidewalk business stuff. So they're gonna be tied up with that whole process. And we all know that people complaining about sidewalks and roads, so I don't know that you're gonna be able to fall back on the highway department to do much in that instance. The people that did the work, the brickwork on that are no longer employed by the town, they moved on. So, laying those bricks is not a hammer and chisel type situation, being involved in that myself in my own. It's not a simple process, you gotta know what you're doing, or you're gonna have a mess on your hands. And those bricks are not cheap.
So I just had a quick thought, or without seeing it, without being right there, but is it possible to like swing it around so it's parallel to the sidewalk? So say, here's the building, here's the sidewalk, and then there's that flower area strip. Can it be, I mean, I don't know where it is now, it says blocking window. Could it just be right along the sidewalk, but in the grass still?
Yeah, that's one of them, I have no clue what's going on with this thing.
Two-sided.
Well, I think it is telling that, where it is now is right, maybe, 15 feet or so from where, a bike rack goes on the final, parking spot in front of the hotel. And Bonnie, who's, the bike project director, it's seen that spot, does not know where the marker is, and someone else who walks around town a lot, sitting on the board, I forget which one of you, but at the beginning of the meeting said, oh yeah, is it on the wall of the hotel? So it's not, clearly, even to us, it's not visible where it is. And I guess I would just ask if we could do the research, see if we can get all of the questions answered for having it moved before the end of June, and bring those proposals to the select board for June 16th.
But Elijah wants it moved before that.
Well, he wants to move before a ceremony, so the ceremony would have to be for the
Ceremony
ceremony.
should be in June.
End of June.
So
Does that work, Elijah?
Sure, unless anybody has an issue with us just going ahead and, making it happen as soon as possible. I mean, I think that we have, plenty of help, we can do research and figure things out. If it doesn't work out, then it'll be delayed till later, but as long as nobody has an issue with it, an issue with moving it, I think we can figure some things out.
Elijah, could you send an email with a simple plan to the select board so we can approve it by email?
Sure, I think you can do that, yeah.
You can't approve things by email, can you?
We can have consensus, can we?
you can have a consensus. but you
It's not an
can't-
official motion, it's just a consensus of.
You have a consensus to agree with the plan, but then action has to be taken at a meeting.
But do we even have to, I mean, it's a state marker, do we
Right.
even have to agree as a board where it sits in town? So we
I
can't-
know when they went in,
the State
I
agrees to
don't know
move
if
it,
we-
isn't that
I can't
enough?
remember, there's not much in the minutes other than the fact of discussion about the vandalism and the wording on the signs, because it's the location of the sign, the state said that's where it's going.
The
Right,
state
so-
sort of takes them, I know right now, they've taken the Rockingham Meeting House sign and they've had that for an extended period of time. Not quite sure when that one's coming back and where they're gonna put it.
You request to move it?
They want to move it right at the bottom of the hill where they go up to the meeting house, that's kind of stupid, I mean, but I think nobody
By
knows.
the time you
it's
see it,
there.
you're past the meeting house, so.
Yeah, so it's not even, nobody knows it's
No,
there.
you're 40 miles an hour.
Well, you can't even read it because you gotta be in an airplane to read the sign where it is now so high. So it commend you for trying to move that, hopefully you're gonna lower it too at the same time, so people can read it when they're going by.
Yeah,
So
if I may, that,
Go ahead, Walter.
yeah, if I may, just to clarify about the Rockingham Meeting House historic marker, that was up so high that you couldn't read it, and took it down to move it. We discovered that one of the faces, the paintwork on it, was pretty severely deteriorated. So it was sent back. Wanted to take it back and have it restored. So it's in the process of being restored. That, along with the Bellows Falls Canal marker, which was also removed as part of routine maintenance, they're in the process of being restored right now. When they are returned, we will, of course, return the Bellows Falls Canal marker to its rightful place where it's been ever since, I guess, 1947. It itself is a historic
Oh, yeah, no problem, I get another.
historic thing. It was one of the first historic markers installed. And the Rockingham Meeting House, the Rockingham Meeting House marker will also be put in a easier to read and more accessible space right near the one of the driveways going up to the meeting house. That's all on the agenda right now.
That by moving it over there, doesn't it take away from the fact that you're losing the traffic going by on 103? And unless you know that it's over there, you're not gonna even see it.
But we're paying $200 a year to have wayfinding state V-Trans wayfinding signs on 103 that can be read, that point and say, this is where the meeting house is. You can't read the meeting house historic marker because V-Trans puts it up higher than ordinarily a sign like that would be placed because of snow plowing along that road. So it's not really accessible. So we have the wayfinding signs with arrows pointing to the entrance ways to go up Meeting House Road, which are readily observed by drivers going by.
Okay, so the
That's-
suggestions made, Walter, that by Rick, that have some sort of a schematic email to the board members so we can see what you're attempting to do with the Andrews Inn sign and location, et cetera.
Yep. As this conversation has been going by, I've been pecking away here. I've got an email I'll be sending here in just a few minutes to Devin Coleman and Laura Treichman up in Montpelier, and see what we can come up with in terms of any sort of funding, and also to address the issue about maintenance of the marker should there be vandalism, because it is state property. It's not a town issue, and I want to make sure that that I'm clear, certainly, should there be some vandalism, how we work with the state to address cleaning things up.
I remember then when that first went in, the state said that would be their issue to deal with if they had to, do any maintenance to it. So things have changed over time, so who knows what the situation is now.
I think we also make sure that we address all the same concerns on one of the meeting halls as well. We can also send a schematic of where we plan to place that and send all of that background information. And then as we get other pieces of the wayfinding program together, we can continue to keep updating the board on progress.
Okay, so let's move on to the sidewalk bid specs. There's a map and letter, and we have got another handout that was put on our tables this evening. So Scott,
A lot of sidewalk conversation, and I guess that's a good thing, but everything is sort of overlapping. So I guess we'll start with the original idea that when we looked at what we were going to do and make recommendations to the board for sidewalk program for this summer, we had identified roughly that 1,800 feet of sidewalk on Pine Street, which I had highlighted on the map, which has large areas of deficient and really broken and dangerous sidewalk, and then additional sidewalk in Saxon River. So we were looking at Westminster Street, roughly from the Warner Center to the bridge. That's not the same width. That's about a 4 foot. Normally, when they replace those sidewalks, they're in that neighborhood. They're not a full 5 feet when they do those sidewalk asphalt replacements. The reason we want to put it out now is that most contractors, they've started bidding out their work. And so if we don't get their work out and get pricing back and get a commitment, then we won't be able to get the work done during the construction season. So the goal this evening was to at least have the board take a look at this proposal, as well as we've had an update since then, because as part of our paving contract, which we've already awarded, we've been working on various issues up in Center Street. And the issue there at Center Street is, quite frankly, the road is incredibly flat, so the road has to be rebuilt. But if you look at the sidewalk, you can see where people have taken just their own asphalt and created little, bumps and jumps into their driveways. So the problem that happens is in the wintertime, our plow comes by, and most years those disappear in a heavy winter. And so then we get a complaint, and it has to come back again. So as we're tearing this road up, and obviously this is we're not going to repave this road for another 30 to 40 years. It made sense to try and do the sidewalk work here, fix these problems so that we have a real approach from the street elevation to the sidewalk elevation. The rest of the driveway elevation behind the sidewalk into people's private drives will remain the same, so nobody has to mess around with their driveway elevations. But the other thing to do, or the reason to do this before you do the paving, is in order for the new sidewalk, when it gets repaired here, They would then have to cut the new asphalt to put in the forms in order to pour the new sidewalk, so that everybody would lose their mind saying, what's wrong with you morons who just made this, this beautiful street and now you're cutting it to make a sidewalk. So timing sort of creates a problem for us. So what I'd like to do is to be able to go out and take this center street area. And we were walking on, today with the engineer and with Andy, so I have a pretty good idea of how much it's going to be. It's going to be roughly $25,000 to $30,000 worth of concrete work. We would go out and our crews would tear up the existing sidewalk. The contractor would do the forms for the new concrete, apply the first sealant, and we would come behind it after 30 days and apply the final sealant to the new sidewalk so that we could save some money. And we could do that within the current year's sidewalk budget allocation. So I can get a pretty quick bid out to 3 vendors. There aren't that many guys that do sidewalks, quite frankly. So I could get it out to the 3 guys, see who would be available, what price we could get, and get that work scheduled to try to get it done before the July, before they start tearing up the road and repaving. So it's a little bit of a sort of bifurcated process here. But by then, we'll also then have the bids back for the next round of what we're looking at for the larger program and how much money I might have to come back and ask you for out of the actual paving budget. Because you guys remember, we had a positive bid on asphalt, so we knew we were gonna have some savings. So this would still give us the ability to try to finish the rest of the concrete work later in the summer. Do the asphalt work out in Saxon River and do this additional 1,800 feet on time.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I've talked to Andy and I've also talked to Scott about this, so, it makes sense to do it before you pave the street. And then
Yes.
otherwise, it's like, look like idiots here. You just pave the street, now you're gonna dig it up and put.
I mean, you'd have to go and saw
Doesn't make any
it.
sense.
It would really be absurd.
Do it right the first time.
So,
And you saved a lot of, that paving bid, you saved a lot of money on that.
yes. So we have money in this year's sidewalk budget. Remember, we're gonna take that money, roll it over, and then add it to next year's budget. So what I would propose is we just take this year's money, do this work on Center Street. We will still have money from the asphalt work that in the July 1 budget. We'll have real numbers at that point. And then I can tell you how much we need to do the next round of concrete work so that you won't have to potentially cut anything. It just makes it a little less chaotic to have to go back behind and redo this stretch. It just didn't make any sense. Because it's kind of a unique situation up there. It's very flat in that section. You just don't have enough pitch. And if you don't do this properly, when you're done paving, what you're gonna have is all these people complaining because the water is pooling on the street. And so you're gonna have done all this work and feel good about, look, you paved your street, how wonderful it is, and people are gonna come and yell at you because the water's pooling on the street. So the good thing rapidly turns into a bad thing. So we're trying to avoid that. Right. So this should avoid that problem so that we can, get proper drainage and get the right elevations.
Oh, got a random question, that fire hydrant that's hanging up into the street there, what's the story with that?
I was walking around today, just didn't catch my eye. Which picture are you looking at?
Station 7.00, right where the flowers go.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There's also another telephone pole that's literally in the middle.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We have 4 of those double poles up there. We've talked to Green Mountain Power, I've talked to Justin. All of the they're Green Mountain poles, but all of their utilities have been moved. There are new poles. These are full cable television on the pole. And again, we talked about this previous meetings, how Public Service Commission, you're supposed to, within so many days, remove the services and then take down the old pole. Justin's notified them, so I think what I'm gonna do is file a complaint with the Public Service Commission. And if they don't do it, then they'll get fined. So then they tend to react to that, so they'll come up and move the utility so you can get rid of those poles.
Would the intent be to try to get that out before
we take.
that would be really awesome.
Great. Because there's 4 of them actually in that run on Center. So.
Do you wanna, broach the bump out issue at this point?
So, yeah, this is
All
sort of
tied
just
in,
a
eh?
generic sidewalk, so if the board's fully good with that, I'm gonna go out and, like I said, we'll get our 3 quotes and I'll give you guys an update at the next meeting as to how that piece is going on center. And then the other piece that we have to talk about as a board is we're approaching year end, sort of that last paragraph of stuff. So like, highway is the never ending deferred maintenance department, right? We could spend a decade and huge amounts of dollars just catching up. But there are some areas that needs more attention more quickly. And I know we talked to the board about it, and I think at this point, I want to get a sense of the board as to, if we're closing down this year's budget, how you might want to do a couple of the more high profile projects that are really impacting the downtown. So we've talked about the 2 bump outs in the downtown, the one in front of the antique store that got damaged by plows over the winter. And then the other one that's in front of the co-op, in front of the coffee shop, that has a tree, has a hole, a sinkhole that's developed in that location, as well as heaving bricks and just general, needs to be redone. So the issue there is there are different types of approaches and people are, you know, the current, both of those locations are currently regular bricks that are cut and then placed. And there are other options to that, and there are some places in the downtown where that's happened, where there is stamped concrete. They wear differently, they look different. I won't begin or pretend to tell you that they're the same. But there are cost differentials when you start to look at how they wear and ultimately how much it costs to do the replacement in this current iteration. So for those 2 islands, it's roughly $1,000 a day or in that neighborhood, because it depends again, we'll have to drop the prices from people and who do this work to hand cut those bricks and place them and do the work that's required. So it's a lot more handwork to do the brick replacement in that pattern than it is to go and replace the brick with the stamped concrete. But there are definite aesthetic and other issues with it. So really it's a long-winded approach to say that the design folks from VIPTA weighed in, they would prefer to see you maintain the existing pavers. They're not in support of replacing those with a stamped concrete. But again, like any choice, right, you're choosing costs and aesthetics versus all the other competing interests for your dollars. And I just want to sort of hash that out of the table so that when we go to line some work up for these, that we're all on the same page.
So the current brickwork that's there now, I don't believe it's in the herringbone pattern, from what I can see.
Not in the traditional herringbone.
No, according to the picture, they're not, they're just set in straight line, basically.
Right.
Because it made it easier to cut them when they were getting to the edges. So you play with herringbone, I can tell you, from my kitchen floor, which is a white plan, and my patio at the house is the same, it's labor intensive.
How many bump outs are there altogether?
Like that one up by. It's not there.
If you go all the way up towards the end of Canal Street,
Well, no, I mean, just in the main downtown, I mean, you
Just
want
in the square?
consistency in the square, or whatever, you wouldn't wanna have some one and.
right, I mean, I think the one that's concrete is near the post office, and I think all the ones in the square, I think are the hand cut brick.
I think we wanna keep that, otherwise you have to do them all concrete.
Well, eventually you're gonna have to do them all, because they do take a beating, so. I didn't propose to do them all at once, because it's a fairly substantial investment, and really it feels like people want to spend more money on sidewalks in the larger picture, so.
But what's the longevity of one versus the other in terms of?
It depends on how many bad winters you have, honestly. Because they take a beating, because every time they end up with snow piles on them, and you gotta scrape the snow off mechanically and then load it into the haul, so they take a beating in the winter, no doubt
Well,
about
I
it.
mean,
The salt doesn't help either.
Well, the stamped concrete, does it last longer and need less repairs than the actual bricks?
I would, again, I would say that from a longevity standpoint, if the concrete is done properly, and that's a big if, because not everybody that installs, does these concrete pours is always on the up and up. They will last long.
Be interested to see how the fire memorial over there holds up. That was stamped concrete.
Right.
Or is it?
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
see
that
how well
walkway is a
came out.
stamped pattern too,
So,
colored and stamped.
In the letter from the design committee, there's some photos of different areas. So the first one has the clay brick in the herringbone pattern that was installed. It was actually installed in 1976 when they initially constructed the bump outs. So that's an example of one of the original areas. There's an example of cement pavers that they experimented with in the 2000s. And those are in front of Walgreens across from PK's. Those have definitely not held up well at all. The material definitely is cheaper up front, but the longevity is very, very bad. And then there's a picture of the stamped concrete in front of the post office, which I would say, looking at it, that it has not performed very well. It is certainly there. It is a slab, but as far as any kind of aesthetics, it's not very pleasing. It's very faded, and the tree roots heaved it pretty badly, causing it to crack, and it has a pretty good lip, which is a real tripping hazard. So that they experimented with that in the 2000s as well. I'll tell you, I just talked to one of the former select people that was on board at that time. That was not a successful experiment. In the letter, we outlined that part of our argument would be that the bricks can be worked on more easily. Concrete, once it fades, heaves, cracks, anything, you have to just take out the whole concrete area. But the brick, you can rework it. If it gets a spot that has a dip, or tree root heaves it a little bit or something like that, you can more easily repair an area of it. Just as an experiment, I actually went out a few days ago and took up a patch in this area of brick that was installed in 1976. It had sunk, and it had a dip that was collecting water. So I did take that area out, filled in with sand, reset the brick, and that was a substantial improvement. Certainly not perfect, because the brick is going on 50 years old, but it is certainly possible to work that, and in a day's time I could take up that entire area of brick and relay them, just replacing some of the ones that are more badly deteriorated, and just by recompacting the base, be able to significantly smooth out any kind of ripples or anything like that. And as I say, just replace the bricks here and there that are more deteriorated.
So you would propose the bricks?
Yes.
So I'm not necessarily looking for a resolution, I just want to get a sense of the board, because if I go out and get pricing and look for people, I want to make sure we're on the same page, so we don't have a problem.
Can we get a price on both versions and then make a decision from there? I mean, I think that's.
I don't think the guys that do the stamped concrete don't necessarily do the hand cut bricks, because it's a limited number of people who do that work, but we could try. It might limit your, the number of folks that might actually participate.
Scott? While we have our tree warden here, which does not include tree removal. So is there a tree on one of the islands that we're contemplating taking down?
Well, in front of the Flatiron, there's a significant depression and there's a real issue there that needs to get addressed. And I'm afraid that when you do that work, there's a decent chance you're going to damage the tree to the point where it's not going to thrive or survive. Plus, as it continues to grow, it's just causing more problems with whatever you decide to do for the repair.
But does it provide shade that is helpful?
Yeah, there's a third of that tree over there.
Yeah, it includes shade, shade from tree. Casting and everything that that.
If we're going to have a tree in front of the Flatiron, we definitely want a black locust. Same as we have there. I've heard a lot of pro and con aesthetically about the trees in the square. When I was a kid, there never were trees in the square. And a lot of people have divided feelings about them. As long as the trees are there, I'm dedicated to their health and well-being. But beyond that, unless you consider them support for the great lighting system we have now, I could very easily see a return to a treeless square that would not be devastating to our village. As long as we have them, let's do our best by them, but as far as immediate replacement of any given one, that takes some thought. But as long as they're here, the black locust species was very well chosen. I don't think any other species could exist the way they do in the tight confines of the square.
My input is that the trees are a major part of the character of the downtown. I personally really like sitting under that tree when I'm at the Flatiron Coffee Shop. And the tree has been growing for nearly 50 years. And I don't think that we should take it down lightly. If there are any possibilities of working around it, putting in some extra effort to make sure that it can stay and we can manage to do the work without impacting the roots of the tree, I think we should make every possible effort.
We got a couple problems over there too, because the street light that's there, if you look at it closely, I think it was an old concrete base that they put in. It's not the traditional ones like the other street lights have. And that base is rotting. And that's also part of what's sinking over there too. So there's multiple problems in that one little bump out. And you can certainly work around all of those things, but if you start, I think once you remove the existing bricks, you're gonna see that you might have a $20,000 or $30,000 issue just on that one bump out alone.
Are the bricks easier to design around things like a tree than that standard concrete?
Anything that's not perfectly square, that needs a cut, right? So the pattern is what really matters. So they can lay them out, but then eventually they have to get to the point where they have them. So around a well and tree, it would require some sort of work.
And it would be easier to use the standard concrete?
Yeah, or something around the tree, like a granite circle or whatever. You done, you just put a concrete work on that. You guys don't have to worry about cutting the bricks so they fit perfectly.
So just, what about the stamping?
They have forms. They use different forms, so they have different patterns. It's not a standard thing, so it can be done, but it's not the same, I will admit. So
Shall we send Scott on a mission to get some numbers and then see if we can make a decision from there? I would think. Find out, you know, I know there's probably a fair few, I know the town group did the regular bump ups with the brick.
right.
Buffalo was one of them and,
Yeah.
Anderson was the other one. but they're no longer available to us.
Are
Right.
they
Yeah.
specialists or something?
Well, there's no hell we're doing.
Yeah.
And they were there for, God, I know, they were there for a long time, cutting and placing bricks.
Yeah, I remember that, watching them do it.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't have anybody in the town crew that can do that now.
Their summer's almost booked solid between gravel roads, the MRGP projects with the state to do those, to do the other work, the grants and aid work, the sidewalk work that we just talked about, the walk bike projects and paving. These guys are pretty much tied up, and then occasionally they're asking for vacation, which I find outrageous. So- I mean, it's just outrageous that these guys that work all winter wanna take time off in the summer. I don't understand it. I know, so that's the most
So
disappointing
one
thing of
has
all.
two, just about the plans for the one, that is in front of the antique store, and just across from Rockingham Roasters.
Mhm.
So what do we think would be the approach to, repairing that,
In terms of the,
or how in depth would we go on, repairs? Would it be a total replacement, or would it be just, fixing that curb on the one side?
the preference would be just to fix the area that we had to patch with the asphalt and do as much, as little work as possible on that. Because I think you're gonna spend a tremendous amount of money in front of the, coffee shop. But again, that's the board's prerogative. You can certainly try. We just have to come up with ways to fund it.
Well, my input would be to do the least amount possible there. I would far rather
Right.
just, do minimal patching, because I don't really think it, requires a total replacement.
Yeah, I don't think it's in, right, I would agree. It's not in as desperate shape as the one in front of the coffee shop. It's really reaching. And then I'd hope to do some more LED streetlight replacements, but my friend Elijah said he heard a buzzing noise in the electrical box behind town hall, where all of our streetlights run to. And it appears that we had our contractor come out and our streetlights are not failing yet, but they're beginning to fail. So he has to come up with a proposal to try to fix that panel.
Are LEDs supposed to last forever?
No, this is the panel that controls all the lights of the downtown, so it's the box behind in the alley down here in the hall.
We'll use my lights.
So
Pretty simple.
I'm waiting to hear a price, but I'm afraid my $10,000 I was hoping to put into new LEDs is gonna go into this box, so I'll let you know.
Essentially, an entire lighting system is, not in the greatest shape overall.
It's aging out, unfortunately. And like all of these decisions that we make, everything has a ripple effect, right? Because it's frustrating, but you never seem to catch up.
That was always something, it's like your house.
Yeah.
It's one thing and there's something else that always comes up.
And then
You
really,
don't plan for it, you don't have any money, that's gotta get put off, unfortunately.
and then just to plant in the board's mind, and as we look at these sidewalk, the maps and what are we trying to do to catch up? We had programmed forever for $35,000 a year, which is really fairly insignificant when you look at the amount of work we can do. So to make any impact at all on our sidewalk program, we probably need to think about budgeting $100,000 a year in sidewalks for at least the next 5 years. And then updating our sidewalk map to see, how much progress we've made, kind of like we've done with our pavement management system. And the board's been very good and has maintained its discipline on working on the streets and the improvements, and it's made a difference. But again, these are all trade-offs, right? Because it means that potentially other things that we'd like to do or want to do might be pushed aside if we in fact make a commitment to spend that kind of money on sidewalks.
Okay, let's move along to updated recommendations for ARPA funds. Okay. Listen, we talked about first.
Right, so we had our
Oh.
list, we were working in December. A couple things that have moved on to my current May list, I just want to sort of walk by the board. We still have our money for the roof project. It's going to be in order to finish the truss work that we talked about to support the new roof membrane that we're gonna be applying for the MRP grant funds for, which is the $500,000 state program. We still need to do some additional support work and actually add some additional trusses. These are not necessarily welded support improvements, but are actually new trusses. I need to finish the engineering and design work for that, which is about 15,000, so we can put that out to bid, have that work potentially then done, which is where you see the additional ask for phase one, which is 100,000. And that work could be done so that when we are in the next phase of the MERP grant cycle, which would be, we've done our energy audit, which they are requiring us to do with their contractor, and Gary's been in touch with them, and we're waiting for the date. As soon as they can come, then we would be in line to do the next phase of the roof project, which is the new membrane, with the potential of supporting any other types of solar or other potential uses on that roof. We at least have the ability to do that if we in fact wanted to. But the new membrane would qualify for this energy program because it would be able to be insulating, and so it would actually produce a higher R value on our current roof, which is not insulated. And we would also fix some drainage up there so that we could then not have the problems that you notice on the third floor where the ceilings are starting to have moisture problems and we're having all the plaster work. And so we'd be able to repair that and get all of that potentially done in time for the 100th anniversary celebration of this building later on in 2025. So time marches on. So that was one of the 15,000 that I was asking you to consider. And the other one was on the train station, because the roads that were there were never formally laid out. So the right of way there was always, the railroad is here, the road's kind of here, the station's kind of here. It had never been surveyed. So when we were working on the lease and working on the, trying to figure out different options with the platform and working with the railroad, there was no dedicated right of way for the road in front of the train station. So we worked with the engineers that were already doing some of the work out there, so it didn't cost us a fortune, but that ended up being another 15,000. That's going specifically into the train station development project. And it was required in order to be able to finalize any of the actual descriptions of the leased properties and be able to do a full legal description, because there had never been one that had been done. Whereas when the railroad had laid out all the railroad right of way, those go back 150 years or something. But actually for the public right of way and the areas that are paved, it had never been delineated. So we had to spend some money to do that. In order to accomplish that and then still maintain our matches for the meeting house and the next round of the train station grant matches, we did put off 115,000 that we had originally proposed to do the replacement of the chassis for the fire vehicle. And as it turns out, replacing the vehicle, the chassis replacement wasn't going to really work. So at some point, as we get later into the meeting, we talk about fire feasibility and all the other aspects. One of the things we'll have to address in that too is equipment and replacement. And so, all these things, every decision creates a new decision, but this is sort of keeping some of these other projects moving with the understanding that we have more to come in front of the board before some of these other decisions come before you.
Any questions? Money. We're gonna have fun with the budget this year, I tell you. Okay, let's move on to the approval of use of fund balance to advertise for fire feasibility studies. This is something Rick and I have been pushing to get done because USDA is not moving off the dime.
So, been in touch with them a couple different times, and as recently as last week, and said, do you have any kind of schedule for review of these? So we've been fully submitted since February. They have no time scheduled for when they're going to review the business development grants. And I said, is it possible you're going to do it in June? They wouldn't even commit to having it done by June or by July. So with that in mind, our concern is the longer we wait, then if we get a notification later in the summer, it puts us farther out so that we won't be able to get the data that we want back in order to help the board with some of our conversations next winter about budget. So really, in order to put ourselves in a position, we still have a chance to get the USDA funds. I'm not confident in it, but we still have a chance. So the idea is at least put out the current RFP, get firms to provide bids, do the review, have fire equipment committee and other people look at it, make a recommendation to the select board. And hopefully by then, we'll have at least gotten some indication from USDA that it's a go. If not, then the board will have to make a decision at that point to sign a contract, and at that point, they'll be in the process. So if you put this thing out in the street here and ask for people to send proposals back by early June, we won't make the June 13th meeting in order to have a recommendation, because we'll have to go through fire equipment committee and some other reviews. But it would certainly be available to you for your July meeting to actually then award the contract and get the work started. Which I think gives the people that do this work enough time to get you not a final report, but a pretty good report of the major components of what you want to look at by the end of the year. So.
Time for budget.
Then time for budget.
Scott, can you remind us of the scope of the study? These people come in and take a look at all of our existing fire protection, staffing, equipment.
They look at manpower, they look at training, they look at run data, they look at your stations, they look at your existing equipment, they forecast out other aspects, you know. We're not growing necessarily, but we do have buildings and other things that potentially, you know, would add to our fire risk. So they look at all the factors that go into that and make recommendations. They're also gonna look at our current fire organization, for lack of a better word, right? We have 3 departments,
Right.
3 different facilities. I'm sure they'll have some input into looking at that. Is there some efficiencies? Are there ways that we should do this? You know, look at our current equipment schedule, our replacement schedule, all the equipment and hose and apparatus and all the support materials that go on those vehicles. All of those things that require substantial investment in order to maintain 3 fire, you know, organizations. So, and they'll have a host of recommendations.
And they'll interview existing chiefs, staff,
Yes,
Sean, et cetera.
right.
Because there's an equipment piece and there's a manpower piece. As I understand it, finding volunteer fire people is getting harder and harder. Is that accurate?
Yes, I would say across the board, and not just here, but if you talk to any fire departments all through the state of Vermont, they're all having the same problems with recruitment.
Right.
They're having the same problems with retention.
And the Saxons River Board would be a recipient of this report as well.
The goal is to have it, at least have some kind of presentation so that we can do it at a tri-board meeting. If I'm not mistaken, I think in November, we had one of those 5 Tuesdays. I think the 28th is actually the 5th Tuesday in November. So I think they might not have a full report, but I think they have a pretty good, pretty good indication. So.
And they'll look at best operating practice. They'll look at, these people know other fire departments in Vermont or whatever. They'll say, here's how town X does it, here's how town Y does it, here's how Rockingham does it.
Well, they look at the uniqueness of it, right? Because we don't have necessarily a lot of people, but we have long distances. And we have unique fire challenges, because you can have anything from a forest fire that's very difficult to get to. You can have a traditional structure fire here in Bellows Falls, downtown.
Right.
You can have a multi-story building fire. We have a propane tank, which keeps some people up at night if that ever caught on fire. So you have some unusual, you have a railroad, which could create its own special needs, if, you know. So these are the things that you don't, you know. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Sitting in front of the covered bridge.
Right. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that go into that analysis, right? It's not a cut and dried, okay, you have so many people and you should have 1.2 whatever firefighters per person, you know, whatever. They don't do it that way. They look at the unique aspects of what makes firefighting here what makes it unique to us.
The bid, will the select board review those bids?
Well, you'll have to award the contract, so the idea would be, we would ask to have bids come in, we look at them, I think the fire equipment committee would make a recommendation, and then that board would all come to the board, so you look at all the bids plus the recommendation.
And it's probably be best to have it at tri board meeting, so everybody's aware of what's going on, but it's an ultimate decision, Russ.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, I'm not 100%, out of the game in terms of USDA, but again, I think if we wait, we're gonna miss that window. We're not gonna be able to get the data that the board really need, and you're gonna have another budget season that you're gonna miss, and I think it's gonna just be.
And there's some big equipment on that schedule.
There's some things on the schedule that are gonna create some, need some attention.
We need a motion.
So please, you can have a motion.
To approve $15,000 in the town funds to proceed with this, feasibility study.
I move that we approve, $15,000 from the fund balance to proceed with the feasibility study on the fire department issues.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appropriate $15,000 from the fund balance to proceed with the, fire feasibility study, which the other entities, Saxon River and Bell's Falls, have also contributed to. So the other half we're waiting for from USDA, those 15,000 was put into the kitty to start with, the flag and eternity. And we need to finish this thing, get it off the ground, we gotta move it.
Right. Absolutely.
So that being said, is there any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimous. Okay. Approved contract for animal holding, services. This is the usual from Wyndham County Humane Society. They do have a contract here. No need to authorize, signs it up.
Yeah, no problem. I live in Preston, I'll bring.
Thank you for that. Could you pass that down?
Or Paul Swallow, or Paul, that's as well.
I'll put some payoff or what?
Yes,
Exactly. Right,
I think.
Oh, wait a minute.
I think
Right?
that's on Fact TV.
Yeah.
Cass picked his pocket up there while I was talking about H480. He got this.
So
I
like
just-
I said, on
the wanted poster.
Lovely, there you go. Okay, so,
Oh my.
Scott, you want to lead in? This is pretty obvious. They gave you study what they're gonna be responsible for.
Right.
There's a fee of 1,600. Did that go up from last year or about the same?
It was a slight increase,
Yeah.
not a lot. And well, Cass deals with it more than I do, to be honest with you.
It's a facility that our town definitely needs. The reason I moved right up here out of the dugout, so to speak. And I will make this as quick as I can. It's an popular subject. And it's related to this somewhat, but not entirely. That facility is an important one for our town. But I want to springboard off that for just a moment. Long story short, long subject short, our town needs a pound. I approached the select board about this before. There are a lot of elements to it. At one time, maintaining this contract seemed like an alternative to having a pound. I think we've shot way past that. Our dog licensing, just as a related example, is down, in my estimation, by about 80%. That's 80%. It is huge. It was worsening before COVID, and I believe personally that COVID presented just the perfect final piece to everyone who was too cheap, too apathetic, too lazy to license a dog. Now, on top of that, you have got an increased percentile of new arrivals, newcomers to our community, who arguably do not know how Vermont works, or they do, but they're using their new status to do an end run. We're not licensing our dogs, we're not identifying our dogs. 4 to 10 times every week, I'm getting calls about with people either having, I'll use air quotes, rescued a dog from traffic, or just dropped the dog off with good intention, but poor example at our police station. The facility that we contract with, Wyndham County Humane Society, wonderful folks down there, but that's meant to be an alternative to placing the occasional unidentifiable dog or dog that's surrendered. But by pure math, we're way past that. I need a place to put a dog just temporarily for 6, 8 hours as I need to try and try harder with a better time facility to find the dog's owners. This is not always easy. Sometimes social media is a complete and immediate blessing. Other times it's a dry well. It just doesn't work. With that extra time, I can improve, I think, by at least 50% my chance of finding that dog's owners. If I have to take the dog down to the facility, it's 90 minutes out of my day round trip. Checking them into that facility means that when the correct owner is found, they need to travel down to Dummerston, go through the process of getting their dog back, which can cost up to $200 after their costs, their shots, their procedures. And I'm not here to second guess their procedure. I'm sure they do what they need to do. But sometimes that expense is so sudden and so onerous to the owners that they, with tears in their eyes, they have to shrug and say, I can't afford to get my dog back. And I don't have an answer for them. I don't have the insurance to keep the dog on my property. My company doesn't have the insurance to keep the dog in my vehicle. It's either bite the bullet and take them all the way on that trip, to have to back charge for, or depending on the day, walk the dog by hand while I implore other people to run the internet for me to find the owner. We really do need at least a very simple day shelter somewhere in our town.
So what would be the procedure to set that up? Did you need?
I need to find a place on town property, challenge right there. Need to get probably a 12 by 20 concrete bed poured, chain link put up. That's basically it. If that can be done well and intelligently, with a 3 to 4 gallon self-watering system and a little bit of divisional shelter for, say, 2 dogs at once, 6 to 8 hours for me to try and work that system. I can push around and make inquiries and get estimates. I think you're looking at now probably between $6,000 and $12,000.
So do we need to put that into next year's budget or
If we want to do it.
if we want to do it?
But as Kat said, the first thing you do, where are you gonna put it?
about the last chance, and I hate to throw this out here unawares of the guy. I can sit down and chat with Josh Kemp down at the wastewater facility, see if they might have, that would actually be, all things considered, perhaps the ideal public location down at the end of Mill Street. Just over the embankment from my house. See if he can dedicate an area like that, if the idea would appeal to him.
Cass, could we ever subcontract with a local veterinarian to hold the dog for that many hours?
I've checked around about that. There's Featherstone over in Walpole. They agreed to take a quarantine dog. That would not be cheap, that would not be inexpensive. It's also a matter of taking them outside the state. I've talked to other veterinarians and, basically they're not interested, they just keep pointing me down to the Humane Society in Dummerston.
If there's a rabies situation involved, you can't take a dog out of state anyway, you can't go out of town. That's the problem.
Yeah, and like I say, the only one who was interested in a quarantine situation, I've never used them, but they did tentatively agree to it, was Featherstone over in Walpole. A quarantine situation, that gets into a dicey area. If someone has been bitten and, a vet cannot confirm rabies status, I have to quarantine the dog on the dog's premises. And if they're an apartment dweller, that gets really peculiar. But again, sooner or later, preferably sooner, this town needs a day pound.
So can we put that on the agenda for a future discussion?
I would think so. I think we should just see if Cass can find a place.
With the board's permission, I can start to make inquiries and get estimates and talk to people.
If you're gonna plan on doing it down to the sewer plant area, then you're gonna have to talk to the village about that, because they're gonna have some say whether Josh can't authorize it, the village gonna have to.
Okay. I just want his input about how he feels.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually.
Robbie and Josh.
That's where it'll have to come from.
And one further question, the exclusions here on this contract for aggressive dogs.
Right.
Who determines which dogs are aggressive? That's your call.
Yeah, I have never yet had to bring even remotely hostile animal down to them. I had one that was surrendered, that was considered to be hostile. And I think that it was such a hands-off situation. I think that ultimately turned around to being a mandatory destruction. The dog was also full of porcupine quills. But, yeah, that was back and forth. That was a bad 3 days for me. But, usually with aggressive dogs, I have now begun to actually write citations. Not my favorite thing to do, but sometimes with certain owners, you kind of have to hit them in the wall before they wake up.
Yes, do you keep a log of how many, how do you keep track of how many dogs you're dealing with?
I keep records and logs, yeah.
Is that something you can share with us so that we can get a better sense of, what need there is?
Sure. Yep, I can dig back and locate those records. Some of them go, trying to think. No, they do not go back, beyond the fire. They just, my appointment just goes back to 18. So I should be able to locate those and dig them out. I think I have them I think I've tried to put them on computer file, which should make it a little bit easier.
So we will put this on the agenda for next meeting.
June or July, I don't know if that's gonna have enough time to get.
Yeah, probably put it out till July.
Also, but then I think probably out of plan for July meeting. Which would be the 11th.
It seems like they take a little bit of research to get together
Some options.
look at, the overall picture.
So in the meantime, we decide this contract.
Or keeping the dogs, I don't know, where, in the car? Is that
I think that's.
What was
Is that the
part of
addendum-
time, but,
addendum B?
you know,
Yeah.
I got a brand new pickup truck and Deborah has warned me tonight that, I'm not allowed to die for the next 6 years until I'm paid for it. And it's not even mine, so. Yes, we definitely need to maintain this contract, however we proceed.
Okay, so we need a motion to.
We need a motion to approve the contract with the Humane Society and authorize manager to sign said paperwork.
All right, I move that we authorize the manager to sign the contract for animal holding between the town of Rockingham and the Wyndham County Humane Society.
Where is that?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Wyndham County Humane Society contract and authorize the manager to sign said document. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Then you travel in order, sir.
Thank you.
Hey. Schedule is in your packet. Right board, town and village trustees, there's something in here for the Sac River one, maybe not meeting.
Sorry?
Sorry, wait, yeah.
No, I'm waiting for the proposed joint board agenda.
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is pretty traditional for us, right? We do our
Yeah.
one meeting a month. I just want to throw these dates at everybody and so we put them on the calendar and everybody can work around, hopefully vacation or.
Hopefully, we're not gonna have these last minute emergency, gotta have a meeting situation, because the deadline's looming the day after the week. Let's try and plan ahead a little bit, so we
We
don't
are
have to,
trying to plan ahead.
kind of nice that.
That's,
Right.
Unfortunately, things happen.
We're trying to find, gotta get back from meeting.
yes, we are planning to work around these dates.
The question's on your part, it's not on my part, so.
I will not take
I'm
you
not
up for
playing
fishing.
saying
I
you, but
promise.
there are other people that have that situation.
If you go fishing, you can
I
stay.
have a proposal so we traditionally meet at Rockingham Meeting House, one meeting per summer.
Right.
Yes.
I propose that we meet, at the Rockingham Meeting House, for 3 meetings, in June, July, and August.
The challenge with the meeting house is, from a traditional standpoint, it makes it very difficult to get any kind of video or any kind, just because of lighting and the way it works. It's just not easy for us to do even a audio or video recording in a meeting. It just makes it hard to conduct business, just the way it is, you know?
I find it really awkward.
It's difficult to conduct a traditional meeting like this, where we have a table and we're able to go through agendas and work through.
In summer, in July and August, it's gonna be so hot, and I ain't gonna wanna be there long, number one, and number two, as you said, the lighting, et cetera, et cetera. August the 15th is, we moved it used to be in September, but we moved it back to August because of the lighting situation.
I'm sure.
And at that point, we have an abbreviated agenda and able to get it done within an hour's time.
Right.
So we don't really push out. So consensus of the board seems to be that we have one meeting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in theory, it's a great idea, but because of the logistics and not being able to do it, I mean, could run, well, I guess you could run Zoom if we're running a
Maybe a
hotspot
handheld,
off of
yeah,
a
right.
phone, but that's not necessarily,
Might not have a bandwidth.
may not.
Right.
Well, you could,
Well, maybe it's something we could, look at more in the future. I would, if I was gonna, have 3 meetings there, I would want to set up a table and chairs in the front, facing forward, because it is awkward to just be, sitting in the pews.
It is. It makes it very hard to,
All right, so we'll go on to, review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. Take a motion?
We approve orders, bills, and warrants.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to, review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. Comments, suggestions, any special notes, anything in there? Okay, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda items for the June 13th, 2023 meeting, we have the annual.
I think we said
Issue.
July.
I think we're pushing until July, so
Oh,
it's more
okay,
time.
we're on July.
Right.
June 13th, I think what we, finances is gonna be on there.
We'll probably have some more sidewalk stuff to talk about, at least an update. Once we get the proposals from the three, got for Center Street, we'll probably have that on there just as a follow-up. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head. We'll have financials, yes.
Got that. 3, 4 weeks to figure out.
Yep.
Okay, agenda items for the joint board meeting. May
So
30th.
we will have the Red Wing presentation. We will have the public safety update, and our friends from Westminster have asked to come. So we'll have a couple of members from Westminster Select Board here. Tax sale policy. There's some updates to the personnel policies that we want to go through, and sidewalks. And I think there's some other things.
Yeah. Rick and I want to, do a brief presentation about the, survey we're working on for increasing that.
Oh, for town meeting?
Town meeting.
Okay.
We met on Saturday, we work, this past Saturday, we'll be working on that.
Okay.
Okay.
And what the Westminster colleagues, what they want to talk to us about?
Couple of days.
They want to talk about policing.
Okay.
Andy, your turn.
We would be, I'm speaking without having checked with my board, but I think, discussion of the impact of the, upcoming bridge work on 121 would be very appropriate, especially if we have Westminster Select Board coming. This recent detour has reminded all of us that we've got a major detour coming up. And if we can discuss that, maybe it's fruitless, but I'd really like to see that on the agenda. The other one is a small thing. We had talked at one point about pet waste stations in Saxon's River and working with the town of Rockingham Highway Department. Is that appropriate for a joint board meeting, Scott, or would you prefer me to just keep that in Saxon's River and?
You want to add some? Is that what you're thinking,
Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah.
We should probably talk about it at the board meeting.
Who's this?
Like the mud mitts, the things for the,
Oh, the food station.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay with you. We'd love to have that on the.
Okay.
As I mentioned to those meetings, and I think Carl brought it up, at the last trustee meeting, it needs to be in a public spot.
Yes.
So nobody's gonna want in front of their house, so that's an issue that you need to be prepared to, you know, there's only 2 places I can think, and that's the park down street or the fire station. I don't know where else is, you're not gonna wanna put it up at school. Kids will be playing in that stuff, you don't need that going on out there.
We appreciate the, words of the experience. The park sounds very plausible to me.
So anyway, we can discuss it. I'll have fun with it.
The other thing I wondered about was, is there any benefit to a group ARPA discussion? Since we have the ability to, ARPA or opioid. I mean, I think these are happening with individual boards. Is there an advantage to having that on the joint board?
I mean, we could certainly do an update. I know that this board's made some commitments on opioid,
We've already,
and the village board has made some commitments on it as well.
They're pretty much appropriated out.
Yeah, at least for now, there's more coming, but for the
Okay. I'll
stuff
keep
that's
it
been
local.
received.
That's fine. Crossing that one off. Thank you.
Okay.
hey, other business. Roger?
I just want to mention the status on the Bellows Hall stairs. Something I didn't quite get to in the sidewalk discussion. I just wanted to just update everybody that as part of our EM Beautiful projects that we've been working on over the past couple of summers now, we want to do a few touch-ups to the aesthetics of the stairs, make it a little bit, make a nicer gateway, into the downtown, and just sort of highlight the importance of them. I touched base with Scott and Andy a while ago about just doing a skim coat over the concrete, or like a line wash, just to freshen up the appearance, and also to reinstall concrete finials on the four pillars at the corners of the lower part of the stairs that once existed. I have raised a few donations locally, and we've met the goal to be able to take on those modest improvements. So we'll be looking for lots of volunteers to show up to help with that. Of course, I'll have to make sure that the way that we're going to be mounting the finials is okay with highway department, and everything's been looked at and planning for all the logistics of that. And so that will definitely help improve the appearance of the stairs. But we do need to look more seriously at more major repairs or replacement of sections of the stairs in the future. Bottom portion is pretty structurally sound, but the uppermost flight of stairs is crumbling and has been repaired multiple times. It does have a section that's crumbled right now, but the highway department can do some repairs on that sooner than later. But I think that we need to get some serious estimates looking at what it would take to replace at least that upper flight of stairs, and we're looking at budgeting for sidewalks and such. Look at that in a serious way. So that's it. Thanks.
No, I'm all set.
Okay. We will be doing an executive session to discuss a contract issue. So, that being said, we will need a motion to go into executive session for a contract. There are two said motions. The first one, and the second one, and ask everyone to vacate.
That's Stan. Hi, guys. Hi.
I need to find a clue for general public knowledge of contract. Contract strategy. We're clearly placing the municipality at a substantial disadvantage by negotiating strategy, and therefore move the second motion of one of the executive session.
I'll second that one. And you heard the second one.
I move board enter executive session to discuss contracts under provision Title I, Section 213A of the Vermont statutes.
I'll second that. We are in executive session, so we can vacate, hold everybody on.
This meeting was recorded by Falls Area Community Television, located at 1 Hospital Court, Bellows Falls, Vermont. If you would like a copy of the meeting, our phone number is 802-463-1613, or email us at fact810@gmail.com. Falls Area Community TV, keeping government honest.